For this module, I'm going to be showing you how to make a pocket bag. So to start out with, just to get a template to work off of, you can do this with a skirt, you can do this with a pant, whatever. I'm just going to use my skirt front. I started with a single dart. You can start with a double dart. When you transfer it over, I just smoothed through that dart so that I didn't have to worry about it during this tutorial. So it is okay for you to just smooth straight across there. I've already added all of my seam allowances, some labels, and I'm ready to go. What we're going to do now is just identify where we want a pocket. So that's today's module, is that pocket bag. So we're going to figure out where we want it. I'm going to do it like a denim jean pocket. So I'm just going to draw on here where I want it. Something like that. And you can use a curve for this. At a full size pattern, we certainly would use a curve. But as long as you're drawing it nice, neat, very, very, very clean, we are good. So I'm going to have that be my pocket opening. Now, to decide how big we want the pocket bag, and you have to start deciding, do you want it to be functional or not functional? So do you want it big enough for your phone? Do you want it big enough for your hand? How big do you want it? Now, all of these pattern pieces I'm drawing on the piece that I have right in front of me. They won't all get cut out of this. I'm going to use some other paper to extract the pattern pieces, but I'm building them on this base so that I know when they get sewn together later, they're all going to sew to this piece smoothly. Very similar to how we do like facings and stuff, where we'll draw it on here and extract the piece and then erase it off the main piece later. With the pocket though, we actually end up changing our main piece that we start with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want my hand to fit here. So obviously my hand is not half size. So let's just pretend that this is where my hand can fit. So I'm just going to draw on here, and I like to have it go straight down. You can change the shape of your pocket bag, it's true, but I'm going to have it be a straight line coming down like that. And then I'm going to have it come over something like that. I could have this swoop longer so the pocket bag stays fuller longer. I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to make sure that this is also 90 degrees at the bottom of my pocket bag. Erase the parts that I don't want. And then there's one final piece of information I want before I start extracting pieces, and that is the facing. So whenever you look at a pair of jeans, you'll notice that this section right here is also out of the main fabric, and that's called a facing. So I'm going to have it start here. It's going to be about ½ an inch between this opening of the pocket and the pocket bag. That'd be about 1 inch in real size. It doesn't have to be exactly that number. That'll change depending on what garment you're making. It might be 1 inch for the facing, might extend underneath this pocket opening 2 inches on one thing or a 1 inch on another thing. So for me, I'm going to make it 3/4 of an inch at the bottom, and then I'm going to have it blend up to ½ an inch by the time it goes to the top of the pocket. I'm going to have it do something like that. So I've got lots of different lines on here. First, I've got my pocket opening, which is this one. I've got my facing, which is this one. And I've got my pocket bag, which is this one. To sew all of this together, I'm going to need several different notches. On my main garment, I'm going to need, well, I'm just going to put a notch where I think they're important. So notches are going to be important here eventually, here eventually, here eventually, here eventually, and here eventually. Not all notches will end up on every single piece, but I'm just going to mark to show you where those notches will be in the long run. Now we get to extract this. So I'm using tissue paper so you can see it on camera. So I'm going to pattern weights really quick just to hold this all down. And I'm going to start extracting. So first I want the pocket bag. So here is the pocket bag. I need that main line, and I also need the outline of this, which I'm just going to use this because it makes it easier to get it perfect. Okay, so I have my pocket bag. On the pocket bag, I also want the information for the facing. So I want this notch for the facing, and I want this notch won't really matter all that much, but I will eventually need it. I need this facing mark. And then I'm also actually going to need this cut line. I'm going to need all of the information, including these notches, to get transferred over. Once I've transferred those over to the pocket bag, I can put that to the side. One more piece I can transfer from here, and that's the facing. So I've got the pocket bag and the pocket facing. That's it. That's all I need to transfer over. Oops. For the facing, I just need this bottom edge of the facing. This is the edge of the facing, so I don't need that. This is the edge of the facing, so I don't need that notch. I do need the notch for where the pocket opening comes in at the top and at the side. So there is the facing piece that I've extracted. Once I have all of those extracted, I can come in here and make one other change. I need to come in and add seam allowance to the pocket opening. And then this is an important spot that everybody seems to forget. When I'm cutting this out, which I'm going to do right now, I'm coming along. I don't go with this outside area. I cut along the pocket opening. Like that. That's really, really important. Some people leave that on there and then they wonder where their pocket's supposed to open up. That goes away. So I can cut all of this out, and this pattern piece is technically done, other than the label. So remember your label with style number, style name, piece number, piece name, size, cut number, piece number, all of that kind of stuff. So remember your label, remember your grain line. On this case, I have my center front and I've got my 3 dots indicating grain line and fold. All of these other things, you can erase them or just hash them out because they are not needed on this pattern piece. The only reason we drew them on there was so that we could come in later and extract them onto other pieces like this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a piece of paper. Put a piece of paper under here so it's easier to see. We're going to come in here and make all of this pretty. For this, I'm not going to add seam allowance down here at the bottom because I'm going to serge this. I'm going to make a little note, serge. And then it's just going to finish that edge and it'll get stitched down onto the pocket bag. This is the pocket facing. That would be the name for this piece. So when you create your label, this is called a pocket facing. So now I can come in and add in the rest of my seam allowance, and it's going to match the seam allowance that I had on the garment. Everywhere except for the bottom edge. The bottom edge doesn't really need that seam allowance. So there is that. Other things it needs are a grain line. In this case, it has to be an arrow because it can't be put on a fold. It's nice to grab the grain line from, I just put it willy-nilly right there, but what it's really nice to do is grab your original piece here, line it up where it's supposed to go, figure out what the grain line is on your main garment piece and make your facing the same grain line. So my grain line is this center front. So I can make that my grain line right here on my facing. This one is a cut to of self. You can go in and you can add that little tiny coin pocket if you want. I'm not going to on this. It's more important for you just to get the idea of how to go about it. So seam allowances, make sure you've got these notches in place. That's for where the pocket opening happens. You can go ahead and cut this out and it'll be ready. When it's done, it'll look something like that. Make sure the label is complete. Final thing that we want is our pocket bag. Now, I could have two separate pieces for a pocket bag. I could have the one that's closest to where, when you're sliding your hand in, the pocket, part of the pocket bag that's touching the back of your hand, and the part of the pocket bag that's underneath. So I could have two completely different pocket bag shapes if I wanted to. But I'm going to put them all in one so that this is on a fold, which is very, very, very common for when we're working with pants. So I'm just going to fold right along this straight line. I'm going to come in, I'm going to add my seam allowances, which are 1/2 inch, or at this half size, they are 1/4 inch. I'm going to make sure that I have my notch for the facing placement, the notch for the pocket opening placement, the notch for the pocket opening placement, and this fold is where that facing comes over and hits. So I couldn't really add seam allowance to that facing earlier, because if I did, it would go into a fold, and we don't want that. Okay? Once I've got that, I can go ahead and cut this out. And I have a pocket bag that opens up like this. I need to come in and add all my seam allowances over here as well, which will be easier not on top of this piece of paper. So I'll add those and come right back. Once I have those transferred over, I need some other information from over here as well. When this sits underneath my main garment, the facing is going to get sewn right here. And it's going to look like that so that I can see the self fabric underneath. This part, to create the rest of the bag, needs to fold back. But unfortunately, right now it's sticking up in the middle of my pocket opening. And we don't want that. So I need to create the pocket opening on this side of my pocket bag. And to do that, I'm just going to fold this piece in half and transfer over the pocket opening just like that. It'll be on the back side, but that doesn't really matter ultimately. You'll be able to kind of see through it. But it needs to ultimately come to the front. I'm going to add my seam allowance. And I can cut that off. So that my pocket bag looks like this. I can now get rid of the cut line over here. You can just cross it out. Same thing with the facing line. You can leave the facing line on there for future reference of where you're going to line that up, but ultimately all that matters is these notches. Those 3 notches are important, and they also need to show up over here. Mostly this one right here for where the facing is going to be. My grain line can be right down the middle. This would be called the pocket bag. I need 2 of them. Let's call this a size 8. Create the rest of the label. So for this assignment, you've got 3 pieces. You've got your main thing, you've got your facing piece, and you've got your pocket bag. Those 3 pieces are what's important. And that is how you make a pocket bag.